Local economy declined in the second quarter, taking a knock from the intense rolling blackouts and the devastating floods in KwaZulu-Natal. Data from Stats SA shows that gross domestic product in the period from April to June contracted by 0.7%. Now, the decline in economic activity was widespread, with 7 industries recording a negative growth between the first and the second quarter. Manufacturing took a huge knock, with 8 of the 10 subdivisions reporting negative growth rates. Now, the mining sector declined as a result of decreased production reported for gold, coal, manganese, ore and diamonds. Agriculture, on the other hand, declined mainly due to decreased production of animal products. The trade sector was also down due to decreased economic activities in wholesale and retail trade, as rising inflation and higher interest rates wipe off consumers' disposable incomes. The construction industry took a knock as a result of decreased economic activities reported for residential buildings and construction. All right, now let's unpack this. We are now joined via Zoom by Professor Jannie Rossouw. He's a visiting professor at Wits Business School. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, those GDP numbers are down and the country has once again been plunged into darkness, as you've just heard. How much of the number that we are seeing now can be attributed to load shedding?
Good afternoon, Donati, and good afternoon to the viewers. In short, Donati, this country will not have sustained economic growth until such time as Eskom has sorted out uninterrupted power supply and until municipalities start delivering services to South Africans, so that businesses have an environment within which they can invest, within which they can produce goods and services for South Africans. So in the final analysis, this problem of a lack of economic growth is the making of the South African government.
Now, let's touch also on those industry performances. We've just heard manufacturing and agriculture, some of the key economic sectors where government seeks to create jobs, but agriculture decreased by 7.7%, due to, in parts, to decline in economic activities reported for animal products. We know now South Africa is currently battling the outbreak and a spread of foot and mouth disease.
Yeah, indeed. Most of the sectors in the economy recorded negative economic growth. We have to remember in the agricultural space that there's a big problem at South African harbours where fresh produce cannot be exported within a reasonable period of time, which is impacting on our fruit exports with a knock-on effect to domestic production. So we are really in a serious problem in South Africa with negative economic growth and positive population growth, because this implies that our unemployment problem will keep on growing, and on a GDP per capita basis, we will continue to get poorer. So it's really time for a new plan. The current plans of the government simply do not work. We need a government that allows the private sector and that gives room to the private sector to get into the economy and to generate economic growth.
And another industry, of course, that is of importance is the construction industry. I mean, we just saw in that package that this industry also took a knock as a result of decreased economic activities reported, especially in the residential and the construction works. You mentioned that we need a new plan. What can government do here as a solution?
Well, specifically in the construction sector, it will be necessary for the government to deal decisively with the construction mafias, as they are called now, where construction sites are simply captured by mafia-type gangs that try and control these construction sites and extort payments for their own benefit. And in terms of the construction mafias in South Africa, law and order has just completely fallen flat. And as long as we have these construction mafias, new construction projects will be unattractive. Again, a government failure with the economy paying the price.
And as we talk about, security, particularly in the economic space, let's talk about, the possibility of South Africa being grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force, which could make doing business in this country even tougher. How will this further affect the country's economic outlook?
Well, of course, grey listing will be bad for South Africa. It will make it more expensive for international businesses, international banks, the international financial sector to do business with South Africa. And South Africa should seriously get its own house in order. It is as if our government is absent. Our government is missing. And these problems are clear and present dangers to the South African economy, to the social well-being in the country. Our government is nowhere to be found. The ANC is busy with its own internal fights about who will be where on which list and who might or might not be elected in December 2022 at its elective conference. That is all that occupies the mind of the ANC at the moment. And in the meantime, the South African economy, people in South Africa are suffering very severely, and it's as if our government has no understanding of human suffering in South Africa.
Should we then not be excited by, the recent announcement made by the finance minister in as far as bills, that have been tabled in Parliament that will, further help in the illicit money flows? I mean, there's the anti-money laundering and the combating terrorism financing amendment bill that was recently announced by the finance minister. And also, I understand that in the coming months, there'll be introducing a secondary bill. Are these just bills that are good in paper and actually no, implementation is being done?
Oh, that's the problem in South Africa. We have very good legislation, we have very good regulation, but we have zero follow-through in terms of implementation. So we lack implementation. The government should focus on implementation of the regulatory structure and should stop interfering in the activities of the private sector to take our country forward. We desperately need economic growth so that we can create jobs for millions of jobless people in South Africa. That is the single biggest challenge facing South Africa, and the ANC government has no plan to overcome this difficulty. The ANC government it's really as if they do not read the newspapers or watch television, as if they have no idea what's going on in the country. And they should really start focusing on the suffering of ordinary South Africans.
And just as we wrap this interview, Prof, of course, you do paint a very gloomy picture. What does it look like for this country in the medium to long term in as far as our economic outlook?
I'm very sorry, I couldn't hear that question. A lawnmower has just started outside my window.
And of course, I have to tell our viewers that you are in the UK at the moment. But Prof, essentially what I was saying, as we wrap up this interview, you do paint a rather dismal, picture of our country currently in as far as the economy is concerned. But just from a medium to long term, where do you think that we are at least going to see a glimmer of hope?
Well, I'm not painting a negative picture. I'm painting an objective picture, and we are at rock bottom. From here, this economy can only improve as the private sector starts figuring out how to work around the government rather than to try and work with the government. So I'm very positive about the future because the private sector is getting increasingly better in working around the government to get our economy growing again. And that is the way forward for South Africa.
Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Professor Jannie Rossouw is from the School of Economic and Business Sciences at Wits University. Thank you so much, Prof. All right, we take a quick break. We'll be back straight after this. Don't go away.